Alright, firstly, I am 100% with Matt. I need that Tarask mini. That thing looks awesome, and I'm definitely going to be supporting that Kickstarter. And also, the bits that are pre-recorded, like beginning this new campaign, are great. They allow Sam and the cast to unleash their creativity in these ad reads, and honestly, I'm loving it. But let's talk about the actual campaign. It had a bit of a rough start. There was a lot that happened at the end of last session, so you can't really blame the party for that. But what we got at the beginning was a great Bert and Imogen dynamic, I think. Imogen's gaslighting was awesome and next level, and I love to see that Laura's shenanigans haven't gone away even though she's with a new character. And Bertrand annoying Imogen enough to get her to start cussing, I mean, that's great. Who doesn't like Bertrand? I mean, we'll talk about Bertrand later on in this episode, but he is great, maybe even was great to have at this table. And man, his dynamic with the group this session was incredible. They're absolutely hilarious together, especially when they're hunting after Denaz, or officially now, Dennis. They're Dennis. This person is Dennis forever to me, and I will continue to call them Dennis throughout this entire video, because if I don't, I'll slip up and I will call them Dennis here and there. So they're just Dennis now. Another very clear thought that I had early on is that this group is so chaotic. I mean, it's like 3 combined brain cells trying to work together in order to figure out what to do about this warehouse situation, and it's just great fun to see. They're really comfortable with their characters and playing at the table. I think partly because they're in person, partly because it's new characters. But I think Matt and the group have really just found their groove right now, and again, I think we're in for something special. Speaking of special things, Ashton this session had some of the best lines. Plan A is shit, Plan B. I mean, like, that's a great line. Also, does no one crime? Just great. Like, put that shit on shirts. Ashton's bluntness is honestly fantastic, and it also gets the group moving. That's what I've seen. He really tries to solve problems. This is probably just Taliesin in the back, but really whenever the group stops, Ashton seems like one of the forces, like Fern, that can really get them going, get them moving, and he's back to kind of that Percy vibe where he's able to help the group strategize and come up with plans. That really wasn't Caduceus or Mollymock, so I'm glad to see Taliesin going back into that role. Another quick side note, but the whisper messaging that Laudna has, fantastic. I hope it stays throughout the entire campaign. It's just this great flavor to get you into the mindset of just how creepy Laudna is sometimes. And I think that's a good balance, because what we've seen is a group with top-notch comedic timing so far. This campaign has started off so funny, but as an experienced DM, this kind of concerns me, because every campaign that started off really funny that I've ran or played in has absolutely destroyed me or the souls of my players, because you get so attached to these funny characters, these funny moments, and then when something happens to them, you just realize that you were more emotionally invested than you thought, and I think that this is going to happen to this entire party. Yes, they're hilarious, they're funny. I think for these first 30 to 40 sessions, it's going to be some of the best D&D we've ever seen. We're going to be laughing a lot, we're going to be growing with these characters, and I have a note right here saying if one of these characters dies, it will destroy us, but I'm prepared for it. I'm prepared for potentially what happened at the end of this session. I literally have it in my notes. But for other characters that we are expecting to stay around a little bit longer than one Mr. Bertrand Bell, well, that's going to be rough, especially if things start happening regarding their backstories. So yeah, I'm looking out for that a little bit, but what I was really looking out for this session is how well Matt was DMing 2 groups as he started to get into the groove of the session, really settle in. He was really bouncing between multiple different groups of PCs very easily, it seemed, and that's not easy as a DM. I mean, splitting the party is usually a general term for players, but also it's my opinion that it was also spread by DMs, because it's really hard to run 2 separate groups of D&D, and Matt just put on a clinic on really switching back and forth during good beats in the story. I mean, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but his pacing tonight was on point. So eventually, after breaking into the warehouse, the party learns that it's an inside job and that Dennis was behind everything. And so they're able to eventually track Dennis to a tavern. They follow Dennis outside the room that they're in and then eventually hear Dennis's demise where they are killed inside. Fern has a great moment just knocking on the door asking if they could come in, and eventually they break down the door, the party does, they rush in and they find this weird Pazuzu from The Exorcist dwarf, really pale skin, creepy, and it's a fight. Firstly, Ashton is still a beast, looks close to unstoppable, his one-liners are awesome, and before anyone says anything, yes, I am now aware Pass Without Trace is from him being an Earth Genasi. I know, I repent for my crimes against the fandom. It was like early in the morning like it is now. My mind slipped. I forgot he was an Earth Genasi. I forgot the Earth Genasi got that. But let's also talk about druids, specifically how Fern was played and using the wild shape to turn into a constrictor snake in combat, gaining that blind sight, and Ashley really thinking through all of her moves. I mean, she's getting really into this character, and I really am interested to see her playing Fern as powerfully as she's being. If you've been on this channel for very long, you know that I am in love with druids. They are my favorite class, so I'm just happy to get to see one played, especially with the veracity that Fern is being played with. I mean, she's brutal. That kill that she got with the constrictor snake, one of my favorites of the campaign so far. And also, let's talk about Imogen's new spell really quickly. Shock Flare. Firstly, awesome name for a homebrewed spell, and I'm pretty sure it's homebrewed. Did 10 points of lightning damage. Looks like 2 dice were rolled, 10-foot radius. I don't know what it's about, but I'm guessing it is linked to the backstory based on what we've heard about so far. Maybe this is Cord at work, but again, I don't know. All I do know is that I'm happy to see Matt continually embracing his homebrew, because this is what I kind of know D&D to be, where it's 90% rules as written and then that 10% homebrew to spice things up. It makes everything feel unique in my opinion, and I really like it. Also, we've pretty much confirmed that Laudna is a shadow sorcerer. She was specifically referencing the Eyes of the Dark ability in the combat when she was trying to see through the magical darkness. Also, like I was talking about in previous videos, she's great in combat. She's the party's blaster now. That Eldritch Blast with Hex, super powerful combination. She's hard to kill, probably reborn. I've seen that theory floating about, and after this session, just with all the descriptions and looking more at that Black Ichor, I really do think that she was undead and resurrected. Which undead and how she was resurrected, I think that's kind of up for debate. I don't know if it's the young elvish girl that was hung from the tree. I think it's probably something a bit different than that, but I do absolutely think that she's undead and is a reborn. Final topic just regarding this battle is how Matt actually ran it. It had a good level of danger. I felt like the party actually had to struggle a bit. There were twists every round. There was a changing environment. It was thematic. Again, enough damage to keep things interesting amongst a huge party, in my opinion. 8 people is not small to be DMing in 5e. So I think Matt did an incredible job with this combat, and I think that he's really begun to elevate his encounter design in this campaign 3, and I think that just with this break at the end of the month that's coming up, he'll be kept more fresh and have all these cool ideas. And so I'm just really excited to see what he puts out, because if he has stuff like this moving forward, I think combats are going to turn into one of Critical Role's biggest strengths. I don't think they were a huge strength. I think they were a weakness actually in Campaign 1 and Campaign 2. But now I'm much more excited for these combats, just with everything that he's throwing in, adding in all these unique touches, and really trusting that his players are powerful and they'll overcome whatever obstacle he throws in front of them. But I digress. So the party beats the creatures that are with this dwarf, this Pazuzu demon thing, and then the dwarf escapes. But they get Dennis's body, and then they head to Lord E. And before talking about the Lord E situation, I just want to once again talk about how this party is just genuinely good to the core. They are genuinely good Dorian is thinking about all the other people looking at the body, so he covers it. Orem is a genuinely good dude as well. He tried to save Dennis and felt immediately sorry when he failed. I mean, just Liam's hitting it out of the park with this character. I think Orem is exactly what this group needs, and we're getting that, and we're getting a very nuanced character who is willing to go out of his way to just try and save anyone, it seems like, or just try to prevent harm from being done. And I think that's a really uplifting and inspiring character. And I also think that Matt has noticed, not only in Orem, but throughout the rest of the party, that they do have a genuinely good bend. And he alluded to this with Lord E's conversation of, are you doing this for money or are you doing this for something more? And I think the emphasis is on the something more. Last campaign, we had a whole bunch of gray morality. And I think the party and the players and Matt himself have now shifted. And that shift has resulted in us getting these genuinely good characters where maybe at the start, they're not all completely good, they're not all completely selfless, but there is that shard of that in there. And everyone, when given the chance, I think is going to prove that time and time again. And they'll have a ton of time to prove it working for Lord E. So let's start from the top. There are these shade creepers, or shadow creepers, as Laura and Marisha mistook them for. They have usually red eyes, but these ones were black. We kind of got that hint that they might be undead. They're little treasure thieves that go about the city of Drusar, but these ones are a little bit dangerous. When they're killed, they explode in a puff of flame. I thought that as I was watching them that they might be just reek-skinned magma methods, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm very interested to see if there's more lore about these creatures, but they're just really cool to me, and I like having this base enemy. Also, I was a little thankful that Lord E didn't recognize the dwarf and that they aren't a part of the Ivory Syndicate, that this group is something new, and I'm smelling the hints of something larger being laid in the campaign, which I'm really excited about. I like big bad evil guys. I like these large overarching narratives that go throughout the fabric of the story, and I think that is maybe what we're getting here, where we'll beat this dwarf guy or whoever he's working for and realize later on that he's a part of something bigger, part of something more. And I'm really excited for that. I really liked Vecna being a huge part of campaign 1 and having his underlying corruption go through. I thought someone like Oban or Lucian would be the same for campaign 2, but it didn't really materialize. So if this dwarf is being set up for something more and the seeds are being laid, I'm all for that. I think that's really cool. I'm also excited for the contract that Lord Esteros gave to the party. It feels like the party will have the option for direct quests now, and giving clear quests I think is appreciated. I know when I'm a player, I want to have agency, but just having the knowledge that I can go somewhere for the next plot point, for the next quest, for guidance from the DM is really helpful. And again, the party can deviate and do whatever they want, but they have at least one ally that can give them advice and point them in the right direction. And I'm just a fan of the contract and being mercenaries for a while. Also, I just want more Lord E. Just give me more Lord Esteros, because you know what? He loves cake. My man loves cake. He gave the party some cake. He baked it himself. He's an awesome NPC, but they hurt his feelings. I would have just said, you know what? Your cake is the best, man. I would have been all for it. If they hurt this dude in any way, I mean, look, he's just doing so much for them. I know I should probably be more suspicious, but I'm ready to throw hands right away if someone fucks with this dude. I hope that we have this whole arc where we just watch him grow and his baking skills increase. And by the time they're like level 10, this man's winning baking competitions in Drusar. Like, just think about that. I'm all for that. I would watch an entire session, kind of like the session where the Mighty Nine watched the peace agreement be made, where we just watch Lord Esteros enter a baking competition. The party hypes him up, you know, we just see him doing well there. I'm all for that. I'm already in love with this NPC just because he's a badass fighter and he can be probably a great chef as well. Again, I'm all for it. I'm all for Lord E at this point. And I have to backtrack against the initial suspicion that I had with him. I will still say, though, that he is a little bit creepy. When asked why he gets his house all covered up, he says that it's not much use to him, the light, that it's heavily trapped, and you know what, I can kind of believe that now with his dealings with the Ivory Syndicate, if they're as dangerous as Lord E has made them out to be, and that he's just trying to live. He mentioned many assassination attempts, but yeah, there's still just a part of me that's like, man, this is so easy to overlook. He's giving such a compelling and convincing story, but what if it's not? However, his story about being a bodyguard for the previous owner of the manor, which again, why were they the previous owner? I don't know, I'm digressing, but that story about wanting more than coin really struck a chord with me, and I think that that is probably genuinely a part of what he's going for. I think he will eventually die, though. I think that he's being set up to be killed by the Ivory Syndicate, and that will be a big plot moment, a big plot point, and a springboard for the party actually taking action on their own. I think this contract situation is temporary so that the party can get used to the world, and then eventually Matt is going to set them out on their own, and that event is probably going to be his death. Or maybe not. I don't know. I'm still concerned about him. That might seem bad, but Marisha's whisper specifically concerns me a bit. Man, I don't know. He still might be hiding a whole lot, but I think he's genuinely trying to be good, and I'm going to say that that counts more right now, at the beginning of this campaign. Also, man, we got more Fresh Cut Grass backstory, a little bit of Fresh Cut Grass backstory, kind of at the tail end of the session where he asked Lord E if he knew about any one-eyed creatures in the area where his old party was killed. To me, this sounds like typical Beholder fare. Beholders have, of course, the one eye, and a powerful Beholder could easily wipe out a party of even high-level adventurers. Beholders are little TPK machines in almost every edition of D&D, so why wouldn't Matt and Sam pull on those old roots now? So yeah, I'm calling it right now. Fresh Cut Grass's party was killed by a Beholder. I think that that's pretty simple, clear-cut, but which Beholder and why, I think that's going to get interesting. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have to talk about really the star of today's session, Bertrand Bell. It was his session today. Travis played great. I think it's one of the best sessions he's played ever. He gained rapport with everyone. He found his groove in the party, and for a second I thought Bert was going to be a part of the permanent team, and that via magic he might be aged down a bit, but I think that his dynamic was grown so much, and I think that's really underappreciated what Travis did from looking at last session, where he was on everyone's nerves a little bit, and I was talking about that, to this session where Fern was buying him a drink. Do you realize how much it takes to do that? To go from in the doghouse to then kind of a little bit of a group favorite where people are talking to him. He's kind of the center of everything. It was immaculate. It was great, and I really want to applaud Travis for doing that. I think it's super underrated, and as DM, I looked at that and said, man, that's a player I would love to have at my table, a player who can ride that line so well between comedy, dramatic moments like him talking about his past adventuring group, his failures, and obviously we have to talk about the final scene, the cliffhanger, where everything went down in this session. So let's just say what we know. The scene kind of started with Imogen's vision, where she's back in Javon, in the horse village, and then we cut to Bertrand walking, greeted by a mysterious man, and then we find out, oh, it's the sallow dwarf, and Bert knows this situation isn't great. He's standing up for himself, and then he's shanked, and he's stabbed through the chest. One is a natural 20, and Bertrand goes unconscious, and at that point, my heart sank. I was like, all right, it's a long shot, but maybe Travis can fight his way out of this, but nah, taken down. And then one of the parts that struck me the most is that Bert, I think, got into Imogen's vision. And I think this is an incredible example of pacing right here, because the scene, it just flowed well. It flowed immaculately. Matt was able to cut between Imogen and Bertrand, and then someone tells Imogen to run. And at this point, the projections come on with the red, and man, I'm just loving the new studio at this point. And then as Imogen's running, she turns back and sees, I think, Bertrand walking into the Tempest. And is this a signal for death? Is he gone? I don't know, but it was like getting stabbed in the chest yourself as a viewer watching it live. And this scene was obviously somewhat planned by Matt and Travis, but judging by Travis's reaction and the reaction of everyone else, I don't think anyone but Matt knew it was going to go down like this. I think this was just, oh man, a ton of bricks getting dropped. And honestly, what better way to set up this dwarf as a reoccurring villain? Alright, now we're going to do a section of this series where I'm going to get into 3 questions we have next week, and then we're going to see if they're answered. So, first question, who is the Sallow Dwarf? Pazuzu 2, as maybe I'll start calling him. What is Pazuzu 2's deal? Like, is he trying to gain power, wealth? Is he working with fiendish or undead powers? Who knows, but I want to know. Another thing I want to know is, what will the new name be? It's obvious that we'll probably be getting a new name soon, maybe next session. I think almost definitely next session. So I'm interested to see what you guys think the new name will be. If Bertrand dies, will they name him the Bertrand Bells, or like will they name themselves after him in honor of their old friend? A sacrifice? Maybe. And is Bertrand really dead? Or was he just taken away? Was he talked to? Was he converted into undead? Because that could be something really interesting. If he becomes a reborn along with Laudna, that could really start things over for that character. I don't know, but that's the point where we gotta wait another week, see what's gonna happen, see what's going on, and I'm just super excited. If you haven't caught up on one of my previous impression videos, you can check that out right here. And also, thank all of you for entering the dungeon.